Amid the trade tensions and high policy uncertainty, the International Monetary Fund has released its April 2025 World Economic Outlook, and the headline is clear. The global economy is slowing, trade tensions are escalating, and policy uncertainty is at an all-time high. Arise correspondent Nkechi Nana has this report.
It's the boldest shift in American trade policy in 100 years, and the ripple effect, a global economy in slowdown mode. The International Monetary Fund's latest World Economic Outlook, released here in Washington, paints a sobering picture.
Our report presents a reference forecast which incorporates policy announcements up to April 4 by the U.S. and trading partners. Under these reference forecasts, global growth will reach 2.8% this year and 3% next year, a cumulative downgrade of about 0.8 percentage point relative to our January 2025 WEO update.
That is a downgrade from the 3.3% the IMF projected only in January 2025. Why? On April 2nd, the US hit the world with near universal tariffs, prompting swift retaliation from trade partners. In the United States, growth is now pegged at 1.8%, nearly a full percentage point below January estimates.
For the United States, the tariffs represent a supply shock that reduces productivity and output permanently and increases price pressures temporarily. This adds to an already weakening outlook and leads us to revise growth down by 0.9 percentage point to 1.8%, with a 0.4 percentage point downgrade from the tariffs only, while inflation is revised upwards.
Europe, even weaker, just 0.8% growth for the Eurozone. And emerging markets, including Nigeria, face slower expansion, 3.7% amid weaker trade flows and tighter financial conditions. And if you thought inflation was yesterday's problem, think again. Global headline inflation is moderating, but not as fast as expected, reaching 4.3% in 2025 and 3.6% in 2026. Nigeria's consumer price is projected to reach 37% in 2026. And more on the trade tensions. Here's what the IMF has to say.
Beyond the abrupt increase in tariffs, the surge in policy uncertainty is a major driver of the economic outlook. If sustained, the increase in trade tensions and uncertainty will slow global growth significantly.
But it's not all doom. The IMF is clear. With coordinated trade de-escalation, bold structural reforms, and also global economic policy could reverse this gloom. For now, though, the world is teetering on edge, uncertain, and frankly, in uncharted territory. From the IMF World Bank spring meetings in Washington, Nkechi Nana, Arise News.
Well, the IMF World Bank spring meetings on Tuesday featured the World Economic Outlook report, which downgraded growth for the globe due to trade tensions. Now, joining us from Washington, D.C. with more on this is Arise business correspondent Rotus Odiri. Good morning, Rotus. Certainly super early at your end in D.C. Thank you for joining us for some new updates.
Good morning, Abby. Good to be with you all. Good morning to all our viewers out there as well.
Great. Well, let's get right into it. Yes, it's super early, I'm very sure. Now, Rotus, is there a single word for this report to describe the outlook?
There's a lot of nominees. If this was a This Day Arise News award show and you want to say what was the award for the single, description for all this, the nominees would be chaos, uncertainty, downgrade. I think I would vote for uncertainty above all else, like Nkechi's report just pointed out. And I'll tie it to the clip you played of Donald Trump saying that, well, if China doesn't want to make a deal, we are going to make a deal, and the deal will be fair for everybody. I mean, Abby, if you and I were we're negotiating something and you're not coming to the table because you don't like the terms, how would you react if I said, oh, well, me and Abby are negotiating, but Abby is not ready to negotiate, so I'll make the deal and it to be fair to Abby. So, you know, it's a lot. Uncertainty is the word, because, you know, how the U.S. plans to negotiate with over 50 plus countries, Japan, South Korea, China, South Africa, whoever else, and get fair trade terms in a small period of time, it remains to be seen.
And uncertainty sounds quite apt too. But what is the IMF's outlook for oil prices, and what is the impact of this more importantly?
Yeah, I mean, I heard you going over oil prices this morning. I know Brent is trending a little bit towards 70, but still below 66 is what the IMF. I mean, they called it a hypothesis rather than a forecast, is what they said in their report. But 66, I think, for 2025, about 62 for 2026. I mean, the impact. You look at Nigeria with the benchmark oil price for its 2025 budget of $75. That, of course, is going to impact how Nigeria funds infrastructure. Not just Nigeria, Saudi Arabia. We cover Saudi Aramco and its record, I think it was $125 billion dividend that it paid to the kingdom in 2023. That was because of higher oil prices following, or was it 2022 when, 23. So following, of course, higher oil prices, and now that's going to fall. So you have Saudi Aramco will be impacted by paying less dividends to the kingdom. The Nigerias of this world, Iran, Iraqs, the Libyas, every oil producing country will be impacted. But on the flip side, it's a tax cut for everyone else because you'll be paying lower prices for fuel at the pump and so on. So, you know, it's two sides to a coin.
Right, and something's got to give. Well, now there's a chart from the IMF report that tells a story about where we are today. What does it say?
Yeah, I love that chart, Abby. Essentially, you start with the horizontal. It's a 2025 growth outlook from the IMF. You start with that horizontal line at the top there in black that, points to what the description to the right of the chart says, January 2025 outlook, also from October of last year. So they were at 3.3% growth. And then you have that big drop to the 3 bars at the bottom of the chart. So to the left, you have April 2nd, which was Liberation Day. It drops to about 2.8%. And Nkechi mentioned it in her report. And then the bar in the middle, the gray bar, is pre-Liberation Day. So there was a higher growth prospect for the economy before those higher tariffs are announced. Then it drops down again to April the 9th. And it also shows you how, a number of, analysts have been scrambling to follow up with every single update from the Trump administration. So that chart, in a sense, just summarizes the volatility, uncertainty, and the back and forth.
Reactionary, lots of volatility there, like you mentioned. What's the takeaway from the difference in growth outlooks for Nigeria between the IMF and the federal government?
Yeah, Nigeria is going to have to update its outlook. I mean, that's, if you look at the 4.6% GDP growth that the government was forecasting, that also didn't add $75 per barrel oil, you're going to have to revise that. I mean, the IMF is looking at 3% growth for Nigeria now, down from 3.2% in its prior forecast. And both of those are lower than the 4.6% that Nigeria. So Nigeria is going to have to do some, going to have to. I mean, that's why the delegation is here in D.C., and they were also in New York as well. I think the government is aware of this. They're just going to have to, readjust those numbers.
Right, absolutely. We're unfortunately out of time now, Rotas, but many thanks for joining us, sharing these updates. We'll certainly will be looking out for more from you there.